Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at another short Latin story. So this one's about King Midas, and it comes from the same collection, The Latin Reader for the Lower Forms in Schools by H.J. Hardy. So if you haven't heard me say this before, H.J. Hardy has a really good collection of stories. Some of them are historical or about myths. Some of them are more kind of like parables. They have morals to them. But this one is talking about a character from Greek history, Greek mythology, if you want to look at it, with King Midas. Even though it's called for the lower forms in schools, I've said this before, I usually peg a lot of these stories at that Latin 2 or 3 range for my more intermediate students. But if you're a teacher, feel free to use it, in whatever way you see fit that kind of matches your classroom. If you're a student, I think these would be really good to get some practice on Latin that you haven't seen from a textbook, or just get a chance to read different things. They're pretty short. They're not too bad to read, particularly introductory ones, and they just give you a chance to practice your Latin. Okay, so like I do in all these videos, the first thing I'm going to do is read the story through, start to finish in Latin, then pause the video. Okay, this will give you a chance to hear the story once. Not that my pronunciation is fantastic, but just a way for you to practice your listening skills. Then once that's done, I'll give you a chance to, I would tell you, to go back and read the story on your own, right? And do what we call the read and reread method. So I would read through it. I would write down any vocab you don't understand, any grammar you're struggling with. And then once you've kind of shored up those problems, go back and read the story again and again and again until you're able to do it without needing a dictionary or any sort of grammar help. That's always the good strategy, I think, for being able to understand the Latin. And again, read this out loud if you can. You don't want to just translate it in your head. It's always good to read it out loud. So if you do that and combine those things, you should be in a pretty good place to move forward. So in the second half of the video, I would say once you've attempted, the read and reread method or translate it on your own, you feel you're in a good place, just compare it to what I have. Not that my translation is anything amazing, but at least it'll tell you if you're on the right track, and then you can feel good moving forward. Okay, so let's dive in. We'll start by reading the story, and then we'll go with our translation. So the story goes like this. Cum Bacchus exercitum in Indiam duceret Silenus ab agmine aberrave. Quem Midas rex Mygdoniae hospitio liberaliter accepit, aeque ducem dedit qui eum ad Bacchum reduceret. Ab hoc beneficium Bacchus Midae optionem dedit, ut quidquid velet a se peteret. Ille petit, ut quidquid tetigisset, aurum fieret. Quod cum impetrasset, primo gavisus est, hac virtuta sua. Non intellexit nihil ipsi hoc perniciosius esse. Namque etiam cibus et potio in aurum mutabator. Cum iam fame cruciaretur, petiit ab Baccho ut donum suum revocaret. So let's pause the video there. Again, I would encourage you to go back, try to read this on your own, and when you feel like you're in a good place, continue on with the video and just see if your translation is on the right track with mine. Okay, so the story starts like this. We're talking about King Midas. We're talking about a character, right? Bacchus, obviously the god. And you have when Bacchus was leading an army into India, right? In India. So leading the army into India, Silenus strayed from the column, the agmine, okay, the sort of battle column or marching column. Okay, so he strayed away. You have this character, Silenus. Then you have Midas, the king of, now this is Mygdoniae. It's a reference to Phrygia, right? So the it's kind of like a precursor to that. So if I remember right, I think it's the name before they went to Phrygia. But either way, this is the King Midas that you are thinking of, okay? So he graciously welcomed him in hospitality, you might say, hospitio, right? So he welcomed him, and he gave to him a ducem. This probably means a guide is probably a good way to translate ducem, more than like a general or a leader. Although I guess it's kind of the same idea. So gave him a guide who reduceret, who led him back to Bacchus. Okay, so he gets sent back. Okay, then you have, on account of this, right, the ab hoc beneficium. So on account of this kindness, because of this kindness, you might say, Bacchus gave a choice, an optionem, to Midas, right? So he gave him a choice that he or whatever he wanted, you might say. So ut quidquid velet, whatever he might want or whatever he wanted, he might seek from him. I say. So in other words, Bacchus says, whatever you want, I'll grant you for bringing me Silenus back. Okay, so then you have Ille talking about Midas. He asked that whatever, quid, whatever he touched, tetagiset, right? Whatever he touched might become gold, aurum fiera. So this is the famous story of King Midas, right? Everything he touches turns to gold. So that's what he asked for. He says, let me have this as my reward, okay? Then you have when he obtained this, you might say, impetraset. So when he got this, however, right, at first he was glad, right? Gavisos est hac virtuta, right? He was glad from this power, right? This virtute, this virtue, right? Power is probably a better way to do it. So at first he was glad, okay? But he didn't understand, non intellexit, right? He didn't understand that nothing was more harmful, perniciosius, right? Was more harmful to him, right? So in other words, it started off pretty good, thinking, hey, everything turns to gold, but he didn't understand the problem that he had just created for himself. And then we end with what the problem was. Okay, you have namque for even food and drink, right? Kibus et potio. So even his food and his drink were changed to gold. Okay, mutabator in aurum. So he can't eat and he can't drink. Okay, when now he was cruciaretur, it means like tormented is probably a good way to do it. When he was tormented by hunger, fame, right? The famine, the hunger, he's starving. He sought out, or he asked, you might say, petit, right? He asked from Bacchus, right, Abaco, that he might take back, revocaret, he might take back suum donum, his gift, okay? So he goes back and he says, no, I don't want to have the power to turn everything into gold, okay? So again, this is just the famous story about King Midas and where he got his gift from and the whole mythology there. It's a good story. There is some subjunctive and things happening in there, but nothing you haven't seen if you're following along with these early stories from Hardy. But again, if you have any questions at all or anything you need from me, feel free to put them in the comments below. Otherwise, just enjoy the story, right? Take it as a little diversion away from whatever curriculum you're using. And hopefully it's a chance to just practice your speaking, your listening, right? If you can find a friend and read it to them, that would be great. But if not, you can listen to my version and just practice something you haven't seen before. Good luck with it.